you can have a beautiful piece of art, a beautiful installation, and you have to have it make sense to the people attending your openings. And that's what I really found the most rewarding. Back when I was in college, I was the director of a committee that maintained, handled all the submissions for, and all the installation of about 5 different gallery spaces on campus with the Wisconsin Union Directorate Committee. Um, so I started there. I majored in art history. I ended up moving to DC about 8 years ago. I was doing gallery work as well. There's a lot of marketing that goes into UX and thinking about not only how you want to talk about your brand and the experience that you want your audience to derive, but also visually how you can communicate that. So I helped out with the Hamiltonian Gallery, which was a cool fellowship program that represented MFA students that hadn't had prior gallery representation. So it was all different kinds of media. We went to a satellite fair at Miami Art Week, and it was about kind of that kind of, I don't know if I want to say selling, but that kind of marketing perspective and that branding was really important too. That was all alongside a growing passion for beverage and hospitality. And it's so cool that you're studying UX at such a young age, but I I wholeheartedly believe that when you enter the job market, even if you haven't been a UX designer for X amount of years on your resume, like you flex those muscles in so many different arenas that that's like that was the coolest part about getting into it for me, was just realizing that, whether I knew how to really quantify it with the title, that storytelling, that iteration, and the the constant process of like sharing your work and getting feedback and tweaking it. I mean, the restaurant I ended up with in DC was one of the only 2 restaurants in DC to have 2 Michelin stars, and they would have a dish on the menu that had, I don't know, 4 months of prior iterations and the tweaks. And then not only that, but the way that the story was framed for us to really showcase it with the audience. So that's like just talking to people is something I really fostered there. Um, General Assembly, I mean, it's awesome. The cool part about it is we got to work with real clients. So in the span of our, 3-month stint, we worked with 5 real clients. Free of Coder Heroes was our last one, and that was kind of the cherry on top of our experience. But just really hitting home the idea that we can make things that are aesthetically beautiful, but if you don't have a rationale, if you don't have a reasoning to back up every design decision, then that's not what UX really is. It has more depth to it. So we had to get out there, I mean, I guess, within our means, within the virtual sphere, and really talk to the users that you're designing for, because you shouldn't assume anything along the way. And right now, I am building my portfolio and working freelance in DC. A couple things I just want to highlight that I've been working on lately. It's been kind of all over the place, to be honest. I'm designing a poster for an independent filmmaker. I want to bring up this idea of kind of passion projects and redesigns and things like that. I've been apartment hunting over the last couple of weeks, and I was feeling frustrated and exhausted. Some of those things were out of my control, but just I did a Craigslist redesign as a little project for myself. I think it's really cool to kind of find platforms that you use all of the time and really kind of tease out your pain points, and then why not just even if it's not for a client in particular, just really teasing out those skill sets and just creating something that can just kind of ease a real life thing that you've been dealing with. Diane and I both did, and actually you're going to get a little peek at the work that her group created for this. But are you familiar with a hackathon at all? What a hackathon is? So this was actually our first experience with it both ways, but this is great because I know you guys are working kind of in different points in this universe, right? And it's so important to learn how to communicate between the idea and the realization of that idea. So basically, a hackathon has this foundation in um, apparently they usually do it, when the world isn't the way that it is, where you meet in like a library or a gym or something, and you actually kind of like spend a whole weekend together just creating something from concept to actually creating like a live app or website, actually coded out and things like that. So I think that was a really good exercise for me, to really work with both engineers and then data scientists as well, and just thinking about how we can leverage data to actually kind of hone in on the ideas that the UX designers want to create. So our more specific prompt was, it had to do with sustainability. So you think about things like map features and things that update that way in your phone, and kind of the signaling of tagging things. So we ended up coding an app that allowed people to pinpoint the green spaces in their neighborhood, but not only that, but tag individual needs, and have that be signaled on the end of the park, but also, even if it wasn't monetary amounts, like donating supplies and things like that. I'm hearing myself talking about it right now. It was a lot. The best advice I can give is communication is super key. And it's just really important to kind of view the process from different perspectives as well. But yeah, we ended up making something. It's still in the works. But yeah, so I guess that pretty much has led me up to here. Yeah, I'm gonna pass it off to Diana so she can tell you a little bit about. And I think the coolest part about our partnership is that our backgrounds couldn't be more different leading up to UX. And I think that's a great exemplification of just how, again, the unconventional background is kind of the new norm with this. And you can be flexing those muscles in all different kinds of spheres. And thanks for listening. Yeah. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Al. Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks so much for talking, Sally. That was amazing. And I love working with you and continue to be astounded by the body of work you put forth. Um, uh, so a little bit about myself and UX design. My background is in business and tech, and I studied behavioral economics back in school. So that kind of guides my understanding of user choices. But I'm currently in North Carolina and relocating to New York eventually. And I was just really excited to learn about UX and to grow in the field. And there are so many tools that we have access to that help us understand things like why a user makes a decision and why they decide to choose to click this or that on a different interface or in a different platform. So I guess this is kind of my background. So I started out in undergrad as a behavioral economics major, and I got my master's from a business school, and was actually an accountant, believe it or not. I worked in capital investments, and it was for a company where my favorite part about it was designing the newsletter for the diversity and inclusion team. So like since being a creative accountant is not like the best description, I decided to put my creativity towards learning how to design websites. So I started out as a project manager at the Institute for Civic Leadership and got into UX design there and decided to solidify my learning by going to GA, which was the place where I got connected with Sally and with Bree at Coder Heroes. And yeah, now I'm also freelancing in product design and would love to share more about the hackathon that I worked on recently. So I'm going to just dive right in and show you a little bit about the hackathon. So the prompt was about sustainability, and so that's like a growing trend right now. Is that for so many years, our energy has needed to be more sustainable. So the prompt was to really leverage open source data to make cities more sustainable. And Sally had an amazing project about the green spaces. And so this product, the one that my group chose, was about solar power. So we started out by identifying a problem that our users didn't know the cost or the value of solar power in the city of Brooklyn. And so they needed a way to access solar power and understand how much it cost in order to really buy into the idea that it was going to provide value to them. So we asked ourselves, how might we create a product that allows users to access solar energy through affordable means? And how can we basically tell users how they can access solar energy? So I actually worked very closely in tandem with the data scientists, and these were kind of their processes. They would gather the data, read the data into notebooks for wrangling. They cleaned the data sets and handled any inconsistencies. They merged them and then analyzed them. And it was really an amazing process because as UX designers, we kind of facilitate merging that body of research with the visual design. And so I really had to understand what we were capable of doing. And this is something that the data scientists put together, which we found really interesting because it's a map. And as designers, we're really interested in just how things work and function and what this information is showing and how can we display it to our users. So after that, we built out some lo-fi designs. Here we have some annotations that's really important in UX design, but it shows kind of the idea where we'll have a map and you can toggle in and out on different screens to show the sunlight and your savings and your solar impact. And then finally, here's our high fidelity prototype. So a user can click on that pin location, see the weather, and then they can scroll up from that lower toggle button, and then they can toggle between the sun score components, the savings components, and also their impact per kilowatt hour saved. But yeah, that's just kind of a little showcase of what you can do with UX and make things really delightful and special for people to be able to interact with your information. And yeah, I guess that's it from me. We do have some exercises on UX design in our own lives that I could share as well. But I guess, are there any questions? We'd love to hear from you all.
This is awesome. Thank you.
I don't have a question, but that looked really nice. That's a very pleasing app that you have.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And that was done from concept to realization, that was done in literally 3 days. So like, it's just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Did you use Figma for that?
Yeah, we did use Figma, exactly. I think other groups used either Adobe XD or Sketch, but we liked Figma a lot. It's one of the more popular options.
What's your favorite part?
Oh, yeah. I just love making products more enjoyable and more usable. We had some screenshots that we wanted to share of examples. I can share it as well if you'd like in our remaining time. But we just had some examples of bad UX design. And so I don't know if you can see this, but here on the left is for example, an elevator that the engineers have built really amazingly, I'm sure, but it's just not very usable, I don't think, because of all the buttons, and they're just everywhere and
Oh my gosh, that's so
in many
funny.
places. And then here's one from Sally, and
I'm moving in a couple weeks, you guys.
yeah.
Don't feel too sorry for me.
Sally, you can explain this one. It's pretty great.
Yeah, well, it's just like there are a lot of things like that it's just like the way that like cabinets are positioned, and they bonk things, or you have to like angle bigger items to like I've had a cabinet that like is shaped like this, so it, like opens wider, so you have to kind of like maneuver it. Or maybe I've just not lived in the best apartments and this isn't the best example, but yeah, it's just, I think it's cool to really communicate that it's I don't, you guys can weigh on this, but I think bad design is way more noticeable to me. I think that good design is seamless, right? And I think that we at least I experience that a lot on apps and websites and just digital platforms where it's like the stock sound of a record going off track, right? Like you're just like, wait, this doesn't, I'm not like, even if it's something as simple as like I'm expecting the drop down menu to be up here and now it's in this weird place. And I think that's been really interesting too, to like really, I think it's kind of intimidating when you first start out to like, oh, make a wireframe, like design this app, and you're like, oh my gosh, like where do I start? But then you start to think about like there are patterns. There are patterns in the way that people read. There are patterns in the way that we expect a logo here and a menu here, and like where like it's really easy to, I think I was personally intimidated to start like design a website, but then you start thinking about like, I don't know, I always just like to just surf the web and think of platforms that I find more or less enjoyable, and then just use that as a framework to just build off of, because there are patterns in pretty much anything. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really great explanation, Sally. Exactly. Just making sure that like our usability patterns follow convention and make sense to people is something that really excites me.
Yeah, I have a simple question. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me right now. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, it's just a simple question. Do you guys find enjoyment in it, or are you guys happy, or is this just kind of more like lucrative, kind of like, is it more like you have to learn what to do, or is it just kind of like a simple, I like this job, or what kind of thing is it for you guys? It's just a simple question, just wanted to know.
For me, it's like absolutely what I love to do. Like I've never, okay, so maybe someone who is a former accountant is not the best example. And I enjoyed accounting, but the ability to be creative and to see colors on a page and to be exploratory and to talk with so many people and hear what other people think is just, it's a dream come true. And that's not to say it's not hard work. I love being a part of the process, but it does take a lot of dedication and a lot of commitment. But it's, for me, it's not solely a lucrative thing. It's a life's passion. So that should inform you that I really enjoy it. It's like I used to play piano when I was a kid, and I really loved it. And so just being able to get back into creative mindset is really nice.
It really can go in so many different directions that if you hate one thing that you're doing in UX, but like appreciate the foundation of it, there are so many different routes you could go with it, whether it's the strategy of it all, the research, the service design, or if you just want to be like a more thoughtful graphic designer, which is kind of the route I'm trying to take. It's like it can really branch off into so many different roles, depending on what really moves you. But yeah, like I feel like I've landed here, like, not as an old person, but not as like someone fresh out of college. And I feel like I keep coming back to this. It's like you probably have been exercising a lot of these mindsets, the human empathy, the storytelling, the iteration, the just the questioning of it all. And yeah, I feel like it's, you know, money's good, but and it's it's I think that it's just that knowing that there is going to be this change that continues to happen and you could be a part of that is really special, because I like honestly don't know, like I'm not trying to make this too much about me, but I don't like knowing exactly where my life is going to go. So I think that like it's the possibilities surrounding this career path that inspires me the most, because I don't have to know and it could change tomorrow or next year or what have you. So yeah, we're super passionate about it. Yeah, we love that you guys are too. And thank you for engaging us with these questions. It's been really, really awesome hanging out with you. And I feel like I don't know, for the next generation of UXers, it's cool to like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I had to like do some soul searching in kind of the present tense, looking back and having to realize that that was a thing I was doing, and you're in it right now, and that's like so rad. It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks for answering that. Yeah, I was just wondering like how the state was like. I'm assuming you guys are pretty much new to UX, so it's like I'm assuming that also you gotta pick up on little pieces and little things that happen. You gotta answer to them as well. But yeah, that's all I really got to say. I'm not really too sure you guys answered every question, so can't really think of anything else. So
No, that's great. Yeah.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
I have another, if you guys still have a little bit of
Yeah,
time.
of course. Go for it.
A logistical question in terms of how you conduct your testing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have like A/B testing? Do you do interviews? Do you do all of it? Do you just talk with people? Do you have set questions? Do you meet in person? Do you do online? Like, yeah, all the questions about that.
Yeah.
So for the first question with regards to research is understanding your scope. So if we think about time value of money, we just want to have as much research that would validate enough to make a decision at that break point. So I love to send out user surveys. You can make one as simply through Google Forms to get a body or population of users that would be representative. And then you can also reach out to them. I love doing remote user interviews. If you have people around you that you feel comfortable with interviewing in person, that's also fine. But there's, with the current situation, everything's currently remote. So interviewing through Teams, through Zoom or Google Meet, any of those resources are great. And then we also have a portion where we synthesize our research. So that's creating, for example, personas that just embody the type of user that you think would most use your application. And then we also use usertesting.com in the past we've used to help facilitate tests. You can upload a website or a platform, and then they can click through it and everything gets recorded. So there are also different types of interviews as well. There's moderated, unmoderated. And we also love making affinity maps. I don't know if you've all tried grouping together just the sticky notes with themes from that you've collected from interviews. So there are a lot of different ways that your research can go about.
Yeah, we love sticky notes. That's like a UX thing. Yeah, it's basically just, what do I do with all this information? You need to identify the gaps that exist and the pain points that exist, and that's what it boils down to. How can you make this thing better, whatever it is? So what Diana was just chatting about, you something that we find useful, and you can do it virtually using Miro or Envision or Mural. You just kind of write down quotes are golden, because you can't make the, like those are like actually from a human being that it's like, I hate this thing about this, or blah, blah, blah. And then you just write them down like very condensed on Post-it notes. And we usually like to do like each color is a person. And then usually it would be in an office on a wall, but you can do it all virtually too, where you just click and drag. You're like, oh, this was a complaint about how long it took the pizza to get here. This was about the lack of ingredients. And then you find over time that that's how you can really hone in on trends. You can just pull them around, and then you just make like clusters of Post-it notes. But yeah, I mean, it depends on what your time frame is and what your scope is, like Diana already said. I think like virtual has actually been great, because the stakes are, I don't know, like, I guess I don't have really any real experience trying to recruit people, get them to talk to me, outside of my intimate spheres, like, beyond virtual, but it's, it's low stakes. You can just, I don't know, people like talking about themselves, I found.
Yeah.
Like, they like putting in their 2 cents. My biggest interview advice, and this is hard for me, you might be able to tell, just let the silence linger for a little too long, and then that's the moment that someone will actually tell you what they think. Because it's like, if you just complete their sentences for them, that's why I said earlier, it's a good exercise in listening, just in general. I didn't realize how much I interrupted all of my friends. It's like, you have to just listen to people and make them feel comfortable. But also, just not asking biased questions is hard tell, where it's like, even things where, I'm sorry if I'm getting too off base here, but it's like, tell me about the last time you used an ATM. Like, that's way better than like, what's been your biggest struggle with using an ATM, or like, even like, what was like like, since like, oh, you just use the word struggle to talk about it, so now even if they don't have a gripe, they're going to create one because you just put that idea in their head. And there's so many things like that where I had to catch myself constantly, like writing a script, like actually writing a script, especially if you're working with a collaborator, to make sure that like, if you're not all in the same interview, there's like no, like, there's consistency there. But yeah, as far as usability testing, it's, screen share. You have your prototype, you send them the link, and you just ask them to walk through tasks. That's the best way to test an app, is to like be like, okay, set the stage with the persona, tell them what lens they're supposed to look through. Like, okay, you are this person, this is what you're trying to do. How would you go about doing that? And then if you see them struggle, don't help them, let them struggle, don't answer their questions, because that tells you a lot. It's like, and I feel like it's really important. The last thing I'll say about that is to tell people that there's no right or wrong way to do it. Because people get really stressed out if they like feel like, oh, was that not what I was supposed to click? Or it's like, there's no right or wrong way to do this. That's the whole point of the exercise, for sure. Just making people feel comfortable, for sure. A little banter before or after is nice too. But yeah, and always ask, but always record the sessions, because you will forget. They will blur together. And yeah, there are definitely a couple moments when I had forgotten to record, and it was like, shoot, like, because you don't want to like misrepresent anything. So